Pine View hadn't changed in decades. This small town nestled in the foothills, home to just over 5,000 people, felt frozen in time, like a fly trapped in amber. The cracked asphalt on Main Street, the faded storefronts, the old church casting a long shadow with its tall bell tower. All of it looked exactly as it had 15 years ago. Documentary title: Silent Revenge in Pine View. Voiceover: when a criminal returns to society, he brings more than just a past. Sometimes he carries a deadly secret. This isn't just the story of a crime. It's the story of Ray and Lauren Clark, a tragedy of love, loyalty, and betrayal at its most intimate level. As the camera glides slowly down Main Street, it pauses on a weathered sign, Sharon's Cafe. Inside the small, homey diner where nearly every local gathers stands Sharon Woods, 42. With tired eyes and a practiced smile, she pours coffee behind the counter. Sharon is the cafe's owner and Lauren Clark's closest friend. Lauren waited 15 years for him, Sharon says, gently stirring her coffee. She visited him every single month, wrote him every week, never missed a visit. People told her to move on, to start over. But she'd always say, I made a promise, in sickness and in health. Remember, April 12, 2024. Ray Clark, now 48, walks out of Lake View Maximum Security Prison. Surveillance footage captures his first moments of freedom, a tall man with graying temples, alert posture, and cautious eyes. In his hand, a small bag holds everything he owns after 15 years inside. Waiting just beyond the gate is Lauren. At 45, her eyes are lined with early wrinkles, but the beauty that once enchanted Ray still lingers. This was the day I'd dreamed about for 15 years, Lauren says in an interview recorded just months before tragedy would strike. I imagine it a million times, us hugging, driving home, starting fresh. Footage of their reunion shows an embrace. Lauren is in tears. Ray smiles faintly, almost awkwardly. Even then, something felt off. Their hugs were stiff. Their words minimal. Cut to archival footage from their wedding, 2 years before Ray's arrest. Young, hopeful, laughing, planning a life together. Ray worked as a mechanic at the only garage in town. Lauren had just begun her career as a nurse at the city clinic. They were Pine View's golden couple, says Dr. Michael Foster, 50, now chief physician at that same clinic. Ray was a local football star. Lauren was the sweetheart from a good family. No one saw it coming. Flashback, 2009 courtroom footage. Ray in handcuffs, standing trial for armed robbery at a gas station just outside town. The haul, $20,000. One employee critically wounded. He got 15 years. He always swore he didn't pull the trigger, Lauren says, nervously twisting a napkin in her hands. Said the gun went off during a struggle. I believed him. I always believed him. When they came back to Pine View, it was quiet. No banners. No celebration. The house Lauren had kept up on her own, paying the mortgage all those years, looked just as it did the day Ray was taken away. She hadn't changed a thing on purpose. She wanted him to feel at home. We barely spoke that first night, Lauren recalls. I showed him around the house like he was a guest. Then we went to bed, in separate rooms. I figured he needed time. Honestly, we both did. The morning after his return, Ray drove to a clinic in Milford, a small town about 20 miles from Pine View. Surveillance footage shows him entering the building, staying inside for nearly an hour, and then leaving with a small paper bag. He told me he needed a routine checkup after being released, Lauren says. Said he didn't want to go to the Pine View clinic because people would stare and whisper. I understood. What Lauren didn't know was that this visit wasn't his first. In fact, a month before his official release, Ray had already been to the same clinic during a temporary work release program. Prisoners' medical records are confidential, explains the former warden of Lakeview Prison. By law, we can't disclose any diagnosis to family members without the inmate's written consent. In the weeks following his return, Ray seemed to settle into civilian life. Lauren continued working at the clinic. An old friend of Ray's offered him a job as a mechanic at a garage on the outskirts of town. Ray had changed, says Jim Donovan, the garage owner and Ray's former high school buddy. He was quieter, more withdrawn. I mean, prison does that to people, I get it. But something else was off. He was taking pills constantly. When I asked, he just brushed it off with a laugh. By the end of the first month, Ray and Lauren began trying to rebuild their marriage. On the surface, things appeared normal. They had dinner together, visited Sharon's cafe now and then, and even discussed saving money to leave Pine View and start fresh, somewhere no one knew them. I noticed a shift in Lauren right away, says Sharon Woods. She used to have this spark, even during all those hard years of waiting. But after Ray came back, it was like that light dimmed. I thought maybe it was just part adjusting. 15 years is a long time. What no one realized then was that between 2018 and 2019, Lakeview Prison experienced a serious outbreak of HIV. Official reports cited 9 confirmed cases, but according to off-the-record sources, the actual number was far higher. HIV transmission in prisons usually happens through shared needles, tattoos, drugs, or unprotected sex, says an epidemiologist who requested anonymity. Even with precautions, eliminating the risk entirely is nearly impossible. Ray never talked about what happened inside prison. He said he wanted to forget it all, Lauren once said. 15 years was a black hole he'd clawed his way out of, and he didn't want to remember what was in there. By the second month of his return, Lauren began noticing troubling symptoms: unexplained fatigue, frequent fevers, and night sweats. As a nurse, she initially attributed them to stress and emotional exhaustion. It never crossed her mind that it might be something more serious, says Dr. Foster. I suggested she get tested, just as a precaution. She refused, said she had too much going on with Ray back. Meanwhile, Ray continued making regular visits to the Milford Clinic. Surveillance footage showed him returning every 2 weeks like clockwork. I asked him about it, Lauren says. He said it was part of mandatory post-release rehabilitation. Told me they were just giving him vitamins and sedatives. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I have believed him? It's late May 2024. 3 months have passed since Ray Clark's return to Pineview. Through the smudged glass of Sharon's cafe, 2 women sit quietly in a corner booth. Lauren Clark and Sharon Woods. You've lost weight, Sharon says, studying her friend's pale face. You look exhausted. Are you okay? Lauren manages a tired smile. She's noticeably thinner, her eyes shadowed with dark circles. Absent-mindedly, she touches her neck where small, swollen lymph nodes are visible. Just tired, she murmurs. Work's been crazy. And at home, well, Ray and I are still trying to adjust. Security footage from a local pharmacy shows Lauren purchasing fever reducers and over-the-counter vitamins. I began noticing subtle changes in her health, Sharon explains in an interview. She kept canceling plans, said she wasn't feeling well. Lauren was always full of energy, but now she was constantly tired. She had odd skin rashes. I told her to go see a doctor, but she brushed me off, said she was a nurse. She knew what she was doing. At the city clinic where Lauren worked, her condition didn't go unnoticed. Dr. Michael Foster, who had known the Clark family for over 2 decades, began to worry. I was watching her carefully, he admits. As a doctor, her symptoms raised red flags. But as a friend, I didn't want to cross any personal lines. It's a difficult ethical position to be in. Then one day, Lauren collapsed during her shift. Her medical chart showed signs of dehydration, low blood pressure, and anemia. I told her it could be anything: fatigue, maybe something more serious, says Dr. Foster. She agreed to some basic tests, but refused further diagnostics. Said she was overworked and just needed more rest. The test results came back with irregularities, a low white blood cell count, and signs of systemic inflammation. Still, without an HIV test, there was no definitive answer. Meanwhile, Ray continued making quiet trips to the Milford Clinic. Clinic records confirmed he was receiving antiretroviral therapy. A pharmacist who worked at the clinic, his face concealed in an interview, recalled Ray's secrecy. He was always cautious, paid in cash, never wanted anything sent to his insurance. Once I asked if his wife knew. He looked me straight in the eye and said she wouldn't survive hearing it. Back at the Clark home, tensions were rising. The walls are thin, says Martha Jenkins, 67, their longtime neighbor. Sometimes I could hear them yelling. He'd accuse her of not understanding. She'd cry and say he'd changed, that he didn't trust her anymore. In June, Ray began pressuring Lauren to quit her job at the clinic. He told her it was for her own health, that she needed time to rest. But in reality, he feared her worsening symptoms would draw unwanted attention from medical staff. I was stunned, Sharon says. Lauren loved that job. Then, out of nowhere, she's taking a long vacation. She told me it was so she and Ray could reconnect. But honestly, it felt like she was hiding from questions from people who might see through the cracks. Later, investigators would obtain Ray's medical records from the prison hospital. An entry dated December 2018 revealed the truth. The patient has been informed of his positive HIV test result. Antiretroviral therapy prescribed. Patient declined psychological counseling. He clearly knew long before his release, says a correctional medicine expert. By protocol, inmates are informed of their diagnosis and treatment is initiated immediately. So the question became, why did he keep it from his wife? By early July, a new symptom appeared, an unmistakable rash spreading across Lauren's body. A telltale sign of advanced-stage HIV infection. She first noticed it in the bathroom mirror. A rash creeping across her collarbone. Her skin pale, eyes sunken. That same day, she recorded a voice memo on her phone, later discovered by investigators. I don't understand what's happening to my body. The fever hasn't gone away in 3 weeks. These rashes, the constant exhaustion. Dr. Foster, Michael, keeps urging me to get a full checkup, but I keep putting it off. What if? No, it can't be. Ray wouldn't. He couldn't. I won't ask questions until I know for sure. Tomorrow, I'm going to Milford. I'll get the tests. Ray began to notice changes in Lauren's behavior. She pulled away from him emotionally and physically, telling him she wasn't feeling well. He grew increasingly irritable. The drinking started soon after. I saw him at the bar almost every night, recalls bartender Tony Wright. Always alone. He drank hard. Sometimes he'd mutter that he ruined the life of the only person who ever loved him, that he didn't deserve a second chance. In mid-July, Lauren quietly made her way to a clinic in Milford. Surveillance footage captured her nervously entering the building. 3 days later, she returned to collect her results. That's when her world collapsed, says Dr. Carol Hines, the physician who delivered the news. I told her HIV test was positive. She didn't cry, didn't scream. She just looked at me and asked, "How long do you think I've had it?" Based on her symptoms, I told her it had likely been in her system for some time. And in that moment, she understood. That evening, chaos erupted at the Clark residence. Screams shattered the quiet neighborhood. The sound of breaking dishes brought in police. The official report stated, domestic dispute. No physical violence. No charges filed. She was yelling that he'd betrayed her, that he'd known and kept it secret, says Officer Jason Turner, who responded to the call. He didn't deny it. Just sat on the couch with his head in his hands. When I asked what it was about, they both went quiet. Said they'd handle it on their own. The next morning, Lauren arrived at Dr. Foster's office. Her medical file notes the immediate initiation of antiretroviral therapy. Dr. Foster became more than just her doctor. He became her confidant. She was in awful shape, he says. Not just physically, emotionally, she was devastated. Imagine waiting 15 years for someone, writing letters, visiting every month, only to find out they knowingly endangered your life. That's not just betrayal. I don't even know what to call it. Meanwhile, Ray began showing signs of remorse. He made several attempts to contact Lauren, visiting the clinic repeatedly, trying to speak with her. I saw him wait for her, says Nurse Janet Wilson, a co-worker of Lauren's. He brought flowers, tried to apologize, but the way she looked at him, there was so much pain and hatred too. I'd never seen Lauren like that before. Eventually, Lauren packed a few things and moved in with Sharon Woods, her closest friend. She told me everything, Sharon says. I was stunned. 15 years she waited for that man. How could he do that to her? I begged her to report him, to go to the police for intentionally infecting her. But she refused, said she couldn't face the public shame, said the whole town would know, and everyone would talk. At the end of July, Ray did something no one expected. He stood before the congregation at the local church, his childhood church, and made a public confession. While he didn't mention HIV by name, his words left little room for doubt. He talked about betrayal, recalls Pastor Daniel Gray, said he'd committed a sin that couldn't be forgiven. He asked Lauren to forgive him. It was haunting. People were confused, bewildered even. Ray had just made a public confession at church, but Lauren was nowhere to be seen. In early August, an unexpected twist shook the fragile lives of the Clarks. Mark Donnelly, Ray's former cellmate at Lakeview Prison, had just been released after serving time for drug-related offenses. He arrived in Pine View under the pretense of visiting an old friend. Their meeting at the Last Mile bar was far from friendly. It was tense, an eyewitness reported. They talked in hushed tones, but you could tell they were arguing. At one point, Ray grabbed him by the chest and hissed something in his face. The guy just smirked and walked away. What no one realized then was that Mark Donnelly had been one of the known sources of HIV inside Lakeview. It was through close contact with him that Ray had contracted the virus. August 2024 brought record-breaking heat to Pine View. The temperature soared to 95 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade. Asphalt shimmered and softened underfoot, and most residents sought refuge indoors in air-conditioned silence. But behind closed doors, the emotional temperature was rising even higher. Medical records later obtained during the investigation confirmed that Lauren had officially started antiretroviral therapy on July 22nd. Though now a patient at Milford Clinic, Dr. Michael Foster continued to personally monitor her treatment. "I broke protocol," Foster confessed in an interview. "Technically, I wasn't supposed to oversee her care once she transferred to another clinic. But after everything, after 15 years, I just couldn't abandon her." Security footage from Pine View showed Dr. Foster staying late into the night, poring over updated HIV treatment protocols. He was desperate to help her in any way he could. Meanwhile, Lauren refused to return to the home she once shared with Ray. She continued staying with Sharon Woods, her best friend. Most nights, they sat together on the porch. Sharon often comforted her as she cried quietly. She just couldn't understand it, Sharon recalls. She kept asking, "Why didn't he tell me? If he knew, why did he let me get sick? Why put us both at risk?" And honestly, I had no answers. Some things are just unforgivable. Ray, on the other hand, tried desperately to reach her. His phone record showed dozens of missed calls and unread messages. One message sent on July 25th read, "Lynn, I know you'll never forgive me, and you shouldn't. But I need to explain. Not over the phone. Please, meet me just once, for the sake of the 15 years you waited." She never replied. Neighbors noticed Ray spending most evenings alone on the porch, nursing a bottle of whiskey. The quiet house seemed to sag under the weight of regret. Tensions escalated again on August 2nd, when Mark Donnelly returned to Pine View. He checked into the town's only motel and began asking questions about the Clarks. "Strange guy," said Tim Gardner, the motel manager. Kept prying about the locals, especially Ray and his wife. Claimed they were old friends, but something about him was off. Real off. That night, Mark met Ray again at the Last Mile bar. Things quickly turned hostile. "I overheard part of it," says bartender Tony Wright. Mark said something like, "We're even now, right, Ray?" Ray went pale, grabbed his shirt, and stormed out with him to the parking lot. I couldn't hear what was said out there, but when Ray came back, he looked shaken, ordered a double, and downed it fast. His hands were trembling. The following day, Mark showed up unannounced at Sharon's house, unaware that Lauren was staying there. A neighbor's security camera recorded the encounter. Mark rang the bell. Sharon opened the door. They exchanged a few terse words. Then she slammed the door in his face. He asked about Lauren, Sharon later said. Claimed he had important information for her. Said he was a friend of Ray's from prison. But I didn't trust a word of it. He gave me the creeps, Sharon says. I told him I didn't know where Lauren was and slammed the door. Then I called her at work to warn her. On August 5th, everything changed. Lauren finally agreed to meet with Ray. The location was neutral, an empty Sunday school classroom at the church, chosen with Pastor Daniel Gray's permission. I suggested the church, Pastor Gray recalls. I thought maybe being surrounded by sacred walls would bring them some peace, if not forgiveness, then at least understanding. But I was naive. Surveillance footage from church security cameras shows them entering separately, 10 minutes apart. Ray arrived first, pacing anxiously in the hallway. Moments later, Lauren entered with firm steps, her back straight, but her eyes swollen and red. What happened behind that closed door remains known only to them. There was no audio, just a silent camera capturing the hallway outside. 30 minutes later, the classroom door swung open. Lauren stormed out, her face twisted in pain and fury. Ray followed a few steps behind, trying to reach her, but froze when Pastor Gray emerged from his office. Later that evening, Lauren finally opened up to Dr. Foster. A recording of their conversation, made with her consent per medical protocol, captured the moment she laid bare what happened. He admitted it, Michael. He knew about the diagnosis while he was in prison. For 3 years, she said, her voice shaking. He got it from Mark? Or maybe someone else, doesn't matter. What matters is he knew. And when he came home, he said nothing. Foster's voice is calm. Did he tell you why? He said he was scared. That if I knew, I'd leave. That after 15 years apart, he couldn't lose me too. So he decided to risk my life instead of telling me the truth. She paused, then added, and now Mark is in Pineview. Yes, that Mark. Ray says he's blackmailing him, threatening to expose how he got infected. Some prison fight that left Ray vulnerable. I don't even want the details. He says Mark wants money for silence. Foster asks, and what's Ray planning to do? He said he'd take care of it, that he'd protect me from shame. Shame, Michael. As if the whole town doesn't already know. You know how fast gossip spreads here. The recording ends abruptly. That same day, Lauren's blood pressure spiked, and Dr. Foster had to administer a sedative. While Lauren and Ray wrestled with betrayal and guilt, Mark Donnelly stirred trouble around town. He swaggered into Sharon's cafe, loudly sharing half-truths and prison stories. His words were filled with suggestion, but carefully crafted to avoid outright slander. He was disgusting, Sharon recalls. Spoke just loud enough for everyone to hear. I told him to leave. He laughed and said soon, everyone would know the truth about Pineview's golden couple. On August 7th, things escalated. As Lauren was leaving the clinic after work, Mark approached her in the parking lot. A surveillance camera captured the tense moment. Mark spoke animatedly while Lauren stood frozen. When she tried to walk away, he grabbed her arm. Seconds later, Dr. Foster emerged from the clinic. He rushed over, intervened, and confronted Mark. Mark released Lauren, but not before turning to make a pointed gesture, mimicking a phone call, silently warning that their conversation wasn't over. He said he wanted to help me. Lauren told detectives a month later. Said he knew what really happened in prison. That Ray wasn't who he claimed to be. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't care. She added, thank God Michael stepped in when he did. That evening, Ray appeared at Sharon's house, intoxicated and agitated. He demanded to see Lauren. Sharon stood firm. She's not here, she said. And even if she was, you're not coming in. When Ray refused to leave, Sharon threatened to call the police. He eventually stumbled off into the night. But the storm was far from over. The commotion drew attention. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains and porches as Ray stormed off down the street, but not before shouting for everyone to hear. Tell her Mark is lying. It wasn't like that. On August 8th, something unexpected happened. Mark Donnelly requested a private meeting with Dr. Michael Foster. They met in a quiet park on the outskirts of Pineview. Footage from a nearby ATM security camera captured their encounter. Mark gestured wildly, animated and intense. Dr. Foster stood still, arms crossed, face unreadable. Toward the end of their tense conversation, Mark handed Foster a small object, what appeared to be a flash drive. I can't comment on the specifics of that conversation, Dr. Foster later told investigators. All I will say is, the information he gave me was shocking. It concerned not only Ray, but Lauren as well. That same evening, Dr. Foster visited Lauren at Sharon's house. They spoke at length on the porch. Neighbors noted that the exchange grew emotional. Lauren stood up several times, pacing anxiously. At one point, she shattered a glass on the ground in frustration. He told me everything, Lauren later explained. The truth he got from Mark, and confirmed through the prison's medical records. Ray didn't just know he was sick. He came back to me on purpose. He could have gone anywhere, started over. But instead, he came back here knowing full well. A journal entry dated that night reveals Lauren's spiral of disbelief. I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. But the pieces fit. He hated me, blamed me for not hiring a better lawyer, for not fighting harder for his acquittal. 15 years, he waited. He planned this. This was revenge. Why, God? Why? On August 9th, Lauren took a personal day and made an unannounced trip to Lakeview Prison. There, she met with Dr. Helen Reed, head of the prison's medical department. Their conversation remains confidential, but security footage captured Lauren leaving in tears. That same day, Ray called his boss and longtime friend, Jim Donovan, saying he needed time off for family reasons. Bank records later showed he emptied his savings account, just over $6,000. Later that evening, Mark Donnelly was seen back at the Last Mile bar. According to bartender Tony Wright, he was in high spirits, loudly claiming he'd be rolling in cash and leaving town soon. He even tipped $40 on a couple of beers, out of character for a man usually careful with money. On August 10th, Lauren returned, not to Ray, but to her own home. She calmly asked him to move out, at least temporarily. Then she began packing his things. She was like a machine, Sharon recalls. Clothes, books, shaving kit. She packed everything with this cold precision. Not a tear. She barely spoke. The only thing she said was, 15 years of my life. He stole 15 years and my health. What did I do to deserve that? That same day, Ray met Mark in a wooded area outside town. Surveillance footage from a gas station camera captured both Ray's old Ford and Mark's rental car turning onto a forest road around 6 p.m. What happened in those woods remains a mystery. By 8 p.m., Ray returned to the small motel where he'd been staying since Lauren asked him to leave. The manager, Tim Gardner, noticed he looked rattled. His clothes were dirty, his hands were scratched, Gardner recalled. I asked if he needed help. He said he tripped in the dark, but the look in his eyes, something was off. On August 11th, Lauren went to church for the first time since her diagnosis. She sat quietly in the back row, alone. After the service, she approached Pastor Gray. She asked me, the pastor later shared, if God could forgive a man who deliberately hurt the person who loved him the most. The mercy of God has no limits, Pastor Gray recalls telling her, but true forgiveness requires genuine repentance. Lauren nodded silently and left the church without another word. That very day, Dr. Foster received a mysterious envelope. It had no return address. Inside was a flash drive. The contents? A video recording, timestamp 2018, showing Ray and Mark Donnelly in a prison cell. The footage would later become a central piece of evidence in the unfolding investigation, though much of it was withheld from the public due to ethical concerns. This recording confirmed our worst fears, Dr. Foster stated. Ray wasn't trying to rebuild his life with Lauren. His return wasn't about redemption, it was revenge. On August 12th, Lauren called Ray and asked him to come over. The meeting took place at their home. Neighbors later reported hearing raised voices, then shouting. I heard her yell, said neighbor Martha Jenkins. Just admit it. Just once in your life, tell me the truth. Then Ray's voice, lower, unclear, followed by Lauren again. 15 years, Ray. I gave you 15 years. Then silence. A heavy, ringing silence. I thought they had finally talked things through, Martha added. Maybe it was over. At 7 p.m., Ray was seen leaving the house. A neighbor's video doorbell camera caught a glimpse of his face, pale, frozen, expressionless. He got into his car and drove away. At 7:30 p.m., Sharon arrived, as she and Lauren had planned earlier. She rang the doorbell. No response. The door was unlocked. Sharon stepped inside and found Lauren unconscious in the living room. She called 911 immediately. The medical report later stated that Lauren Clark was alive, but in critical condition due to a drug overdose involving multiple substances. She was rushed to Milford Hospital's intensive care unit. Meanwhile, Ray Clark vanished from Pine View. His phone went dark. His car was discovered abandoned at a bus station in a nearby town. Detective Alex Morgan was assigned to the case. At first, investigators suspected a suicide attempt, driven by Lauren's emotional breakdown and diagnosis. But a note found at the scene shifted the narrative. "Forgive me if you can. You don't deserve this. I'll die before you anyway. Complications. I just don't want you carrying this burden alone." Mark Donnelly also vanished on the same day. His belongings were left behind at the motel. His bill was unpaid. On August 14th, Lauren regained consciousness in the hospital. Her condition stabilized. Sharon and Dr. Foster were by her side. The first thing she asked, Sharon recalled, was, "Did he run?" "I didn't know how to answer. Ray was truly gone. The police were searching for him." Nurses at Milford Hospital took note of how much time Dr. Foster spent in Lauren's room, far more than necessary. When Sharon wasn't around, the two spoke at length behind closed doors. What was said remains unknown. Then, on August 15th, everything changed again. A body was discovered in the woods just outside Pine View, near the area where Ray and Mark had last been seen together. But it wasn't Ray. Mark Donnelly was found dead, the victim of a fatal blow to the head from a heavy object. The autopsy confirmed he died between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. on August 10th, the exact time frame he'd met with Ray in the forest. Detective Morgan issued an immediate warrant for Ray Clark's arrest, now wanted for murder. The case exploded. A once private tragedy morphed into a full-blown criminal scandal. By late August, Pine View buzzed like a shaken beehive. The media swarmed in. The Clark story now gripped not only the town, but the entire region. Lauren was discharged from the hospital on August 17th, but she didn't return home. Instead, she moved back in with Sharon, refusing to speak to reporters and keeping her conversations with police brief and strictly necessary. She was like a shell, Sharon said. Burnout. She walked, she talked, even smiled sometimes, but it wasn't real. It was mechanical, like a doll going through the motions. But it was her eyes. The pain in them was haunting. So deep, so raw, it frightened even those closest to her. The official police narrative was clear. Ray Clark deliberately infected his wife with HIV. Once discovered, he murdered the man blackmailing him, Mark Donnelly, and fled. But Detective Alex Morgan, 38, wasn't fully convinced. In most domestic crimes, Morgan says, the truth sits on the surface. But in this case, too many things don't add up. Why would Ray return to Pine View at all if revenge was his plan? And why not disappear after infecting Lauren? During a search of the Clarks' home, officers found several empty blister packs, medications of various types. Among them was a handwritten note, allegedly a suicide letter from Ray. But handwriting analysts flagged inconsistencies. The writing resembled his, but something felt off. Then, on August 19th, a breakthrough. Detective Morgan was granted access to a video recording that had been anonymously mailed to Dr. Foster. The footage left even the experienced detective rattled. The timestamp read March 12, 2018. The location, a prison cell. Ray and Mark are seated on their bunks. The tension is immediate. Mark smirks. You think she's still waiting for you? Your loyal Lauren? Ray stiffens. Don't say her name. Mark presses. Come on, man. It's been 6 years. You've been getting her letters, her little care packages, her vows of eternal love. Meanwhile, she's out there, living, breathing, probably screwing someone else. Ray lunges. A fight breaks out. Guards intervene and separate them. Later, the recording continues. Mark, blood on his lips, sneers. You gotta stop kidding yourself. She's no saint. Ray, still seething. Shut up, Mark. Mark leans forward. Let's pretend she is waiting. So what? You get out and what happens? You think you'll pick up where you left off? After everything. Ray looks confused. What are you talking about? Mark grins. Oh, you don't know. You still think the shot was an accident. That she didn't know the gun was loaded. Ray freezes. His expression shifts. Confusion, then disbelief, then rage. Mark's voice turns cold. Nobody told you? Sweet little Lauren made sure the gun was loaded. She wanted you locked away. Her testimony? That wasn't a panicked mistake. It was calculated. The video cuts out. The next clip is dated May 8th, 2018. Ray appears colder, hardened. The warmth is gone. I've made my decision, he says. When I get out, I'm going back. She'll think everything's fine, just like before. Mark off camera, and then Ray stares straight ahead. Then she'll know what it's like to die slowly, to be betrayed by the only person she ever trusted. The final clip is dated December 2018, following an HIV outbreak in the prison. Ray sits alone in the infirmary, holding a test result. There is no sorrow in his face, only grim resolve. This, he says softly, is perfect, better than I could have planned. On August 20th, Detective Morgan visits Lauren at Sharon's home to clarify a few details. Mrs. Clark, he begins. Did you testify against your husband in the 2009 trial? Lauren turns pale. Her hands begin to tremble. I testified in his defense, she says. I told the court the shooting was accidental. And before the trial? In your initial statement? Lauren hesitates. I was in shock. I might have said something else. I don't remember clearly. One more question, Morgan says. The night you were found unconscious, did you truly intend to end your life? Lauren nods slowly. Yes. I was devastated. I had just learned Ray had infected me. On purpose. And yet, Morgan adds gently, you took a combination of medications that couldn't have killed you. Lauren freezes. Her eyes lock with his. She says nothing. August 21st. An unexpected turn. Late at night, Ray Clark walks into the Pine View Police Department. Gaunt, unshaven, and visibly exhausted, he quietly demands to speak with Detective Morgan. I didn't kill Mark. That was the first thing Ray said when he walked into the interrogation room. And I didn't try to kill Lauren. But yes, I'm guilty of infecting her. During questioning, Ray laid out his version of events. Yes, he admitted, he had learned of Lauren's betrayal from Mark while in prison. And yes, he had been furious. In his rage, he even considered revenge. He thought about using his diagnosis as a weapon. But when I saw her, after all those years, something inside me changed, Ray said. She had waited for me. All that time. And I couldn't do it. I wanted to, but I couldn't. According to Ray, he had planned to protect her by using precautions. But during an argument, emotions ran high. He let anger take over. He acted recklessly. I didn't want to admit I was sick, he continued. I was terrified of how she'd react. It was cowardice, not cruelty. Detectives pressed further. Why disappear after what happened with Lauren? Because I didn't believe it was a suicide attempt, Ray replied. On August 12th, we argued. I finally told her everything. She was furious. Then suddenly, she calmed down. Told me we should have a drink, to a new beginning. Something felt off, he said, but he drank anyway. Almost instantly, I started blacking out. The last thing I remember was her face. Calm. She looked me in the eye and said, 15 years of my life. You have to pay for that. Are you saying she poisoned you? I woke up hours later, in a car parked at the Milford bus station. In my pocket was a one-way ticket to San Diego and $2,000, my own money. She planned the whole thing. And Mark Donnelly? Did you kill him? No. He was blackmailing me, demanding money for a video. I paid him everything I had, $6,000. He promised to leave. Then why the scratched hands and filthy clothes? He checked the money. We parted ways. I walked back through the woods. It was dark. I slipped, fell into a ravine, had to climb out. That's all it was. Meanwhile, at Sharon's house, Lauren received an uninvited visitor, Dr. Foster. I know the truth, he told her. And I know it was on the recording Mark gave me. Lauren turned pale. What are you talking about? That Mark was blackmailing not only Ray, but you too. That you gave a different statement back in 2009. Shut up, she snapped. You don't know anything. I know enough, Foster said calmly. And I want to help. Sharon, listening from the kitchen, stepped forward. Lauren, what is he saying? Lauren's face crumpled. You don't understand. No one does. Then explain, Sharon urged. Lauren looked down, her voice breaking. Ray wasn't the man everyone thought he was. At home, he was controlling, violent. I lived in fear every day. He tracked my every move, every dollar. Why didn't you ever speak up? Sharon asked. Because this is Pine View. Ray was the golden boy. Who would have believed me? She continued through tears. The robbery wasn't random. Ray planned it. He needed money. He was drowning in debt. And I helped. I checked the security cameras at the gas station. I knew what we were doing. You were an accomplice, Foster said quietly. Yes, but during the robbery, the gun went off. He never meant to shoot anyone. Still, I panicked. During the first police interview, I told them everything. Then I realized I'd go to prison too. So I changed my statement. And Mark found out. Somehow, he got copies of my original testimony. He told Ray in prison. That's when it all changed. When I realized Ray had deliberately infected me, I fell apart. And then Mark came back and made everything worse. He blackmailed me, too, Lauren admits. He threatened to expose that I was an accomplice. And you? Sharon asks, her voice trembling. What did you do? I met with Mark, Lauren says, then pauses. I offered him money, but he wanted more than I could give. She falls silent. Dr. Foster, Sharon says, turning to him, you arranged to meet Mark in the woods the same day he met Ray. You knew Ray would be there with the money, and you waited until Mark was alone. Lauren says nothing, but her silence is louder than words. What happened next? Sharon asks softly. I just wanted to talk, Lauren whispers. But he laughed. He said Ray and I deserve each other, that he'd bleed us both dry for the rest of our lives. She looks down, her voice cracking. I didn't plan it. It just happened. A rock, Foster says gently. You hit him with a rock. It was right there. He turned his back, Lauren says. I don't even remember the moment. Just the way he fell. And then, Foster continues, you staged a suicide attempt. You drugged Ray, drove him to the bus station, bought him a ticket, and left him there. Then you came back and took a calculated dose of pills. How do you know that? Lauren asks, startled. I'm a doctor, Foster replies. I know how those medications work. Your dosage was precise, enough to make you pass out, but not enough to kill you. Sharon rises abruptly, her face pale. Lauren, you killed a man. You tried to frame Ray. I'm not proud of it, Lauren says quietly. But you don't understand. I waited 15 years for a man who hated me. All that time, he was planning to destroy me. And so, you destroyed him, Foster states. Yes, an eye for an eye. He stole my life. I took his. He condemned me to die slowly. I condemned him to prison for a murder he didn't commit. Suddenly, Sharon's phone rings. She answers. Her expression hardens. It's the mayor. Ray Clark's at the police station. He's giving a full statement. He says he didn't kill Mark. He's back, Lauren repeats softly. Then, it's all coming to an end. On August 23rd, Detective Morgan receives the forensic report on the murder weapon. It contains not only Ray's fingerprints, but also smudged prints from another person, still distinguishable. Soil samples on Ray's clothing match those from a ravine located 200 meters from the murder scene, confirming his version of events. Morgan reviews CCTV footage from the Milford bus station dated August 12th. It shows a hooded woman dragging a semi-conscious Ray from a car, purchasing a ticket, and placing him in the waiting area. On August 24th, Detective Morgan arrives at Sharon's house with a warrant for Lauren's arrest. But the house is empty. Sharon, in tears, tells him they left last night. Lauren and Dr. Foster. I didn't know. A manhunt begins. Their credit card records show a motel reservation 120 miles away. When police arrive, the room is empty. On August 25th, a package arrives at the Pine View Police Department. Inside is a flash drive and a handwritten note. The whole truth. Let the town know who Ray Clark really was before prison. The drive contains photos and video evidence, bruises, medical records, personal footage, documenting the abuse Lauren suffered during her marriage. It paints a chilling picture. It explains a lot, the detective says, but it doesn't justify murder. On August 26th, the department receives a final message from Lauren. I'm guilty of Mark Donnelly's death. It was a crime of passion, but I have no regrets. He and Ray ruined my life. Don't look for me. By the time you hear this, I'll be gone. Later that day, Dr. Foster's car is found abandoned on a secluded beach, just 300 meters from Pine View. 2 sets of footprints lead toward the ocean. None return. September 2024. Pine View slowly settles back into its quiet routine. But something in the town's air has changed, like the ghost of a truth that refuses to be buried. As media attention fades, the news vans roll out of town. On the surface, Pineview looks just the same, cracked asphalt lining Main Street, the old church standing tall with its bell tower, and Sharon's Cafe still nestled on the corner. But for the people who live here, life has changed forever. At the police station, Detective Alex Morgan reviews the final documents from the Clark case, preparing them for transfer to the district attorney's office. "This is the strangest case of my career," he admits. "You start with one victim and one suspect, and end with so many blurred lines that it's nearly impossible to tell the victims from the perpetrators." On September 10th, the Coast Guard officially calls off the search for Lauren Clark and Dr. Michael Foster. Their presumed death certificates are issued based on the abandoned car, the suicide note, and complete inactivity on their bank accounts and IDs. No bodies were ever found. In cases like this, a Coast Guard officer explains, the currents often carry remains out to sea, especially if there was extra weight involved. Meanwhile, Ray Clark remains under house arrest, awaiting trial. The murder charges for Mark Donnelly have been dropped, but Ray still faces prosecution for intentional exposure to HIV. He lives alone in his once shared home, now eerily silent. "He's changed," says Jim Donovan, the only person still in touch with Ray. "Gone completely gray in just a few weeks. Barely talks. He's on medication, seeing a therapist. It's like whatever life he had left has been drained from him." In mid-September, investigators finish reviewing the contents of the package Lauren mailed before vanishing. It includes photographs, audio files, and medical records confirming years of domestic abuse, both physical and emotional, inflicted by Ray prior to his imprisonment. Domestic violence is often cyclical, a consulting psychologist explains. Outbursts of rage are followed by apologies, affection, and promises to change. Victims can spend years trapped in the cycle, especially in places like small towns where appearances matter more than truth. In Lauren's case, the illusion of being the perfect couple, combined with Pineview's tight-knit community, kept the truth hidden. No one feels that weight more than Sharon Woods. Once at the center of the town's social life, her cafe is now half empty. People avoid her eyes and the subject. "I don't understand how I missed it," Sharon says tearfully. 15 years of friendship. I never saw bruises. Never noticed the despair. What kind of friend does that make me? Then, on September 18th, an unexpected development shakes everything again. A patient matching Lauren's description is spotted at a small clinic near the Mexican border. She carries new documents, has altered her appearance, but the clinic administrator recognizes her for national news coverage and contacts U.S. authorities. By the time they arrive, she's gone. Left behind is a set of test results, HIV negative. "That's technically impossible," says a virologist brought in to consult. HIV doesn't vanish. Either the original diagnosis was wrong, or those results belong to someone else entirely. Prompted by the anomaly, Detective Morgan revisits Lauren's medical files from both Pineview and Milford clinics. After close examination, he spots something unusual. The HIV results from Milford have subtle formatting inconsistencies, Morgan notes. Different from other records from that facility. Falsification? Sheriff Perkins asks. Possibly, Morgan replies. But the real question is, who did it? And why? Because if Lauren Clark was never HIV positive, then the entire narrative, the revenge, the betrayal, the tragedy, may have been an elaborate fabrication. And in Pineview, where the truth once seemed so clear, doubt begins to grow all over again. September 25th. An envelope with no return address appears in Sharon Wood's mailbox. Inside is a handwritten note and a locket, one Sharon had gifted Lauren years ago for her birthday. The note reads, "I'm sorry for the lies. They were necessary. Don't look for me. I'm finally free. L." Sharon turns everything over to the police immediately. Forensic testing confirms the handwriting is Lauren's, and fresh fingerprints on the locket are a match. On October 1st, Detective Alex Morgan requests a comprehensive review of medical records from Lakeview Prison. This time not just for Ray Clark, but also for Mark Donnelly. The results arrive a week later, revealing a shocking discrepancy. Mark Donnelly had, in fact, been HIV positive and on antiretroviral therapy since 2017, a full year before Ray was believed to have contracted the virus. But Ray's records show no indication of a positive diagnosis. The only entry is from December 2018, noting that he was prescribed general supportive therapy, no explicit mention of HIV. We've spent all this time believing Ray deliberately infected his wife, Morgan says. But what if he never had HIV at all? What if he didn't know? Or worse, had been manipulated? A follow-up interview with Ray provides startling clarity. I was never HIV positive, Ray confesses. My test in prison came back negative. But Mark, he told me the doctors were lying, said they were covering it up. He even forged a test result and showed it to me. I believed him. Ray explains how Mark exploited his vulnerability, feeding his paranoia and bitterness, nurturing the seed of revenge. Why would he do that? The detective asks. Payback, Ray replies. I testified against him years ago. My statement added 3 years to his sentence. Morgan presses further. So, why did you continue going to the Milford Clinic? Why the medications? They weren't for HIV, Ray says. They were antidepressants. I didn't want anyone in Pine View to know, so I went to another town. And Lauren? Morgan asks. Was she actually HIV positive? Ray lets out a bitter laugh. No. Now I see it. She wasn't. After I told her what I believed, that I thought I had infected her, that I had wanted revenge, but couldn't follow through, she saw an opening. She told me she had tested positive, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We hadn't used protection. The story begins to unfold as a chilling web of mutual deceit. Mark spent years convincing Ray that he was sick and that Lauren had betrayed him. Ray returned home, torn between vengeance and rekindled emotions. Lauren, realizing the truth, decided to turn it into her own weapon. After years of abuse, she manipulated the moment for revenge. And Dr. Foster? Morgan asks. Ray hesitates. I don't know, but he was always in love with her, even before I was arrested. She didn't see it, but I did. On October 10th, after a full review of the evidence, Ray Clark's charges are formally amended. He is no longer charged with intentional HIV exposure. Instead, the charge becomes intentional threat of infection, a crime based on intent, not outcome. The sentence is reduced, 2 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment. Lauren Clark and Dr. Michael Foster remain listed as missing, presumed dead. But Detective Morgan refuses to close the case. There are too many red flags, he says. A negative HIV result from a clinic in Mexico. Fresh fingerprints on the locket. And let's not forget, Foster had access to all medical records. If anyone could forge a test result, it was him. What if, Morgan wonders aloud, they staged their own deaths and vanished together? At the end of October, another twist arrives, this time at the office of the Pine View Gazette. A package, no return address. Inside is a single DVD. What it contains, no one is prepared for. The DVD contains a video message from Lauren, recorded based on the timestamp, just 1 day before her presumed suicide. I'm telling this story so you'll finally know the truth, she says. 15 years ago, I sent a man to prison, a man who made my life a living hell. Yes, I lied in court to avoid prison myself. Yes, I was an accomplice to robbery. I'm no saint, but I'm also not a woman who silently endures abuse year after year. Lauren details the physical and emotional abuse she endured in her marriage, explaining how the robbery had felt like her only way out. When Ray came back, I wanted to believe prison had changed him. I needed to believe it. But when I learned that he had spent years plotting to hurt me, I realized nothing had changed at all. She pauses before concluding. It was time to end the cycle of violence, of silence, of revenge. Don't look for me. The Lauren you knew is gone. Even if I'm still alive, I'm dead to Pine View and everything it stands for. Detective Morgan watches the video with Sharon, who sits quietly beside him, tears in her eyes, but a glimmer of relief, too. I always knew she was stronger than she let on, Sharon says. Whatever happened, I hope she finally found peace. By November, Sharon's cafe slowly returns to a sense of normalcy. Ray Clark sells his house and leaves Pine View. Locals whisper that he's headed to Arizona for a fresh start. Detective Morgan occasionally scans global crime reports, looking for any trace of a couple resembling Lauren and Dr. Foster. Once, he thinks he spots her in a photo from an international medical conference, but the woman disappears before he can verify. Pine View returns to its quiet routine. The church with its bell tower, the cracked pavement on Main Street, and a new mechanic at Ray's old garage. At Sharon's Cafe, though, no one speaks of the Clarks anymore. But everyone remembers. A silent reminder. Behind the doors of small towns, even the darkest secrets can hide, and the line between victim and criminal is perilously thin.